to accept something negative upon myself, we'll say most of us are not able to do that. Therefore, again, see, I will say, here's the issue. The issue is, if I come to an intellectual acceptance, sometimes that's a bit difficult because let's say, again, I encounter some type of life adversity. I encounter some type of challenge. I encounter some type of difficulty. So if I'm living life based on my intellect, then I will say the problem that I have is when something negative occurs, so how do I reconcile that? Right? How do I ultimately go ahead and fix that? It's hard to say, okay, I hereby accept upon myself all of these negative events. Who in their right mind accepts upon themselves negative events? But if I have emunah, what emunah does is emunah says it's not negative. It's not negative. Some way, somehow, all of the events that occur in my life are latova, are for good. Sometimes, again, the latova aspect is clear and recognizable. Sometimes it just requires a lot of introspection, a lot of thought, and really a lot of emunah. But it's only through emunah, says the Mechaber, that a person is going to be able to ultimately accept all of the events that occur to him with a certain simcha, with a certain happiness, that all is latova. What the Mechaber is essentially saying is, and this is sometimes a very difficult thing, especially depending on how a person is wired. But sometimes the only way to cultivate true emunah is when you dispense with the intellect. It's something that sometimes, again, the intellect can only get you so far. And sometimes to reach these highest levels of emunah, a person has to stop processing life events through their intellect and process life events through their heart. A recognition that if I really want to believe that all is from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that therefore nothing bad comes from God, therefore everything that occurs in my life is latova. It is sometimes difficult to process that through the intellect, because intellectually I don't see how it's good. Intellectually, I don't see how it's pleasant. Intellectually, I don't see how there's a silver lining. Intellectually, all I see is difficulty. All I see is pain. That's why sometimes you have to stop seeing through the intellect, and we have to see through emunah, through the lave. Because sometimes, again, when I begin to see not through my intellect and not through my eyes, but I begin to see through my heart and my soul, I can begin to process this reality that because it's from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's for good, even if I can't understand what the good is. Next section, page Peches, Hakol Tov. When a person strengthens himself to believe that all is for good, be'emes yihiyeh lo hakol tov. I'll say this is a very strong statement. When a person begins to believe that all is for good, be'emes, in reality, all will be good. Right? If you think it's good, it will be good. Kamovan, ki be'emes, im hayu hakol shomim b'kol hatzadikim, lahamin tamid b'Hashem yisbarach. Shakal, the quotes of Rabbi Nachman. So Rabbi Nachman writes that if a person would constantly listen to the words of the tzaddikim, to believe that all that comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu is l'tova, is for good. And a person begin to give thanks to HaKadosh Baruch Hu for everything in life, both the positive things as well as the difficult things. So again, all of us, all the difficulties, all the diasporas would be bottled immediately. Mashiach would come immediately. So Rabbi Nachman seems to be saying over here, will say the following, that the tachlis of this world is to cultivate a profound sense of emunah. Therefore, if a person were to go ahead and possess this emunah, a person were to see HaKadosh Baruch Hu, believe in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, both not only in the good times, but also in the challenging ones as well, there would be no longer any need for adversity, there would be no longer any need for challenge, and Mashiach would come immediately. And I will say, now whether you want to interpret the words of the Rebbe literally, that again everything would stop and every Mashiach would come, or you want to interpret it more metaphorically. The idea being that when a person is able to accept that all is from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and by extension a person is able to accept that Hakol is L'tova, I will say sometimes a person is able to lead a much more serene, almost messianic-like existence. Let's just read one more line. I will say, "Afilu Adam shal pi dine haTorah hayitzrichem lios lo yisul." So Mechaber says something very dramatic over here. It says even a person who again should is hayitzrichem lios lo yisul means would be deserving of suffering in life. Imamin who shakol l'tova, if he believes that all is for good, umodel laHashem al hakol, and he gives thanks to HaKadosh Baruch Hu for everything. Dai bazeh levato mimenu esrov hadinin v'yisur. I will say what the Mechaber is positing here. We'll stop over here. We'll pick up with this in Eretz Hashem more tomorrow. Is the idea that there are many purposes we have in life. Like one of the dominant purposes we have in life is that the Ribono Shel Olam created an imperfect world in order for us to partner with Him and repair it. That's one tachlis in this world. The other tachlis I want to say in this world is that a person is supposed to cultivate a sense of emunah. The goal in life is to be able to create a refined sense of emunah. What's the refined sense of emunah? To recognize that God exists, God controls all, that what comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu is never bad, and therefore all of the circumstances in our life are l'tova. Everything that happens to us some way, somehow, is for good. That is the goal. And also what the Mechaber is saying over here is that sometimes the way the Ribono Shel Olam brings about that goal is through challenges, is through suffering. Because without adversity, I would not be able to work on my emunah. So therefore the Mechaber suggests, quoting Rabbi Nachman, that if a person therefore arrives at this level of emunah, once I arrive at this level of emunah, the need for adversity and the need for suffering is no longer there. It perhaps sometimes becomes obviated. Therefore, the sooner we go ahead and arrive at this level of emunah, sometimes the more we're able to spare ourselves the difficulties and the suffering in life. We'll stop over. We'll pick up again in the midst of this idea tomorrow.
I shouldn't, trying to get out of this, but worth it. It's all I'm trying to talk to you.
Absolutely. I'm saying this is emunah. So the amazing part with emunah is you could always opt out.
You can say it's all emunah, and you can say this is happening because this is what I thought was. So I don't need to. Why am I trying to fight my way out?
No, because the answer is that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants.
How do you know? Maybe he wants you to accept.
It's called emunah.
Maybe he wants you to accept.
But we know that He doesn't. Meaning, we know that ultimately what He wants us to accept. That, remember, I want to be clear. That's a gross misinterpretation. The Mechaber is not saying emunah means resigning yourselves to your fate. Emunah means accepting that it's l'tova. L'tova doesn't mean that I don't fight. L'tova doesn't mean that I don't struggle. L'tova doesn't mean that I don't try to maximize my circumstances. It just means that however difficult they may be, I accept that it's from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's a very different thing. This is not right. This is not resignation. This is about the fact that somehow it's l'tov. Okay. Yes. That's the challenge. Remember again, this is all challenging because it's difficult. Yes, you could resign yourself. Yes, you could throw in the towel. Yes, you could say it's all from God, so what's the point of trying? But that's not the message. That's not the message. Just like you could easily say it's all random and it's not God at all.
But fighting it can also be a sign of God.
No. I don't see why you say that. I could say that all is from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's all l'tova. These are circumstances for good. These circumstances are here for my self-actualization, for my self-transcendence. I have to figure out what to do with these circumstances. That's emunah. Can you misinterpret it to lead to inaction? Of course. You can misinterpret it to lead to apikarsus. You can misinterpret it to go ahead and lead to a whole bunch of different things. But that's why we're learning it. We're learning how to define the scope of that emunah. If a person is looking for an excuse for inaction, as we all know, it's inaction. It's inaction. It's giving up your bechira to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's it. That's a misinterpretation of this.
The thing is, in the previous sentence where he says that you serve enlightenment, because the purpose of you serve, one of the purposes is to turn you to HaKadosh.
Right. Absolutely. All right, Jabal, say good morning. Let's begin. A lot to do today and not a lot of time. So Kuf Mem Beis. Today's daf is 142. Our shir this morning is sponsored by the Ullman family in honor of Michael's birthday. Mazel tov, happy birthday. I've never asked him Shalom Tovos. Mazel tov.
Which almonds?
I'm sorry?
Look, they older than 40.
Baruch Hashem. That was
Under the hood of those.
David Fun. All right. Now you're preserved for all eternity on the World Wide Web as well. Baruch Hashem.
Which almonds do I?
Baruch Hashem. Mazel tov, mazel tov. All right, so I'll say let's begin. So we left off yesterday with the following top of Kuf Mem Beis. So remember again, we have a particular brisa that we are focusing on over here, where the brisa talked about the idea that a man says to his wife, "Nichase lahayta ma'avarta." A man is conveying ownership. Ultimately, again, a man is conveying ownership to the fetus. Right? The wife is pregnant, and he's conveying ownership to the fetus. We're trying to figure out whether or not a husband actually has, or a man has the ability to engage in such an act of conveyance. Does the uber have the ability to acquire or not? So it says the Gemara, so why don't we say now, according to the Brisa indicates that the husband does have the ability to do that, because the Gemara seems to indicate that when a man says the nechas and the property belong to the uber, that the uber becomes the rightful owner of the property. So the Gemara says, so maybe the case over here is where the husband says that he's conveying the ownership of the property to the fetus once it's born. So the Gemara says, Rav Huna. So Rav Huna goes according to his reasoning, because Rav Huna says, Af lo kana. So I'll say, so the Gemara says, Rav Huna says that even if a father goes ahead and conveys ownership to the baby once it's born, at the end of the day, it is still not kana. It still does not acquire. We'll see why in just a moment. Because Rav Nachman says, Rav Nachman says, they'll both say, if one goes ahead and is mezakeh, conveys ownership of property to an uber, so while it's in utero, so the uber doesn't have the ability to acquire. However, if a man makes a t'nai, and the t'nai is that he conveys ownership of the property to the uber once it is born, then ultimately, again, it is kana, it does acquire. That's Rav Nachman. Rav Huna says, Af l'chishateli lo kana. Rav Huna, on the other hand, says that even once the child is born, it is still not kana, it still does not acquire. But Rav Shesha says, echad zeh ve'echad zeh kana. Whether the child is in utero or whether the child has been born, the child ultimately, again, is able to acquire the property. So both say, what we have over here is a three-way machlokes regarding the ability of the uber, the ability of the fetus to acquire. We have Rav Nachman saying that ultimately, again, in utero, the baby cannot acquire, but once the baby is born, it has the ability to acquire. Rav Huna says, even when it's born, it doesn't have the ability to acquire. And Rav Shesha says, whether it's in utero or whether it's born, it has the ability to acquire. So the Gemara says, I'm Rav Shesha, so Rav Shesha says, from where do I know my shita? That the uber, both in utero, right, baby in utero, and once it's born, both have the ability to go ahead and acquire the sign. So listen to this. So learns it from the following brisa. So we learned it from the following brisa. Disanya. Ger shemes ubizbiz on the chazos. Listen to this case. You have a ger who died. Now we're going to see. Remember, when a ger dies, when a convert dies without any relatives, so his property becomes hefker. Once the property becomes hefker, so whoever chaps it first becomes the owner. So in this case over here, you have a ger who died, and Jews, other Jews heard that he died, and therefore again went to take possession of his property. And then they hear afterwards that they were mistaken, and they heard that the ger in fact left behind the son. Or Rabbi say, for that matter, when the ger died, his wife was pregnant. So he doesn't get to have a son in this world, but rather, again, his wife was pregnant. So what's the halacha? Chayav elahachzir. So they're obviously obligated to give back all of the property. Because in this case, again, the property is not hefker. Look at the Rashbam for just a moment. It's almost right across in the Rashbam. Chayav elahachzir. Kevan de'ishtam uberes ubar yoresh havi. So we'll say, so it appears over here what the Bryce is saying is the following, that since the wife is pregnant, there's an uber, the Uber essentially inherits the property of the father when he passes away. And this seems to be approved to Rav Sheshes' position that that a child in utero is kana. So the rice is not finished. So what happens? So what happens? Let's say all the other Yisraelim give back the property to either the son or to the wife or to the pregnant wife of the ger. And then I will say, what happens? Then after they returned the property, so the people who returned the property hear that what? That the wife either miscarried or the son who was alive passed away. What's the halacha? So once they see this progression, so what ends up happening over here is ger dies. People think he dies without heirs. So what happens? They take the property. They then hear that either there was a son or the wife was pregnant. They give back the property, either again to the living son or to the pregnant wife. Then what happens? Either son dies or pregnant wife dies, and therefore once again everything now is hefker. Everything now is ownerless. So what happens? So the Gemara says, "Hichzik b'shniya kana b'rishona lo kana." People then subsequently go ahead and retake possession of the now hefker property of the ger. So what's the halacha? Those who took possession the second time acquired the property. Those who took possession the first time did not acquire the property.
The wife is still alive, she doesn't.
No, a wife without a wife. If the wife was still alive, she would. Correct.
So there would have to be both of those.
Correct. The assumption is that the child in utero is dying because the mother died. We're going to get to that. So the Gemara says, "Uber lo kani." So if you hold about say that a child in utero is not kona, then lama luhu lachzuki b'shniya hachziku luhu chadazimna. So also listen to this. So Rav Sheshes is raya. Rav Sheshes Paskins that a child in utero is kona. Now, how does he prove it from this price? So we'll say this price seems to be a pretty explicit proof, because what is the price is saying? Remember, ger died. People took possession of the property the first time, thinking that there were no heirs. It turns out that what? That Lamais, again, the ger left behind a pregnant wife. So what happens? Now it turns out that there was an heir. The Uber acquired, and therefore, again, when the Uber subsequently dies, those who take possession the second time ultimately acquire the property. Now, if it was true that an Uber was not Kana, then what? Then it should turn out that those who took possession the first time have really acquired the property. The fact that it's only those who take possession the second time acquire the property shows you that in fact an Uber is Kona. So I'll say this is Rav Sheshes' proof to his particular position, namely that an Uber, even in utero, is Kona. So the Gemara says, Amar Abaye. So Abaye says, well, this is not necessarily a raya, because it could be Yerusha haba'a me'eleha shayni. So Abaye says, this might be different, meaning it might be in general that an Uber is not Kona, but Yerusha may be different. We'll say, what does this mean? If you think about it, remember how we got to this case? We got into this discussion about whether or not an Uber could be Kona, whether or not an Uber, a fetus, could acquire something. The question was, the father is conveying something to his child. So what Abaye is suggesting is a conveyance may be different than an inheritance. What do I mean by that? An inheritance is something that occurs automatically. In other words, I don't need the das of the parties involved in order for inheritance to occur. If there's a father, there's a son. A father dies, that inheritance is transferred over to his son. That is a de facto process. Masha'in came a gift, which is a conveyance. So we'll say what Abaye is suggesting is something very interesting. Maybe under normal circumstances, an Uber can't be called. Right? Meaning, if I want to be maknes something to an Uber, I want to give over something to an Uber, I want to convey something, maybe that doesn't work. But maybe Yerusha does work, because Yerusha is what's called haba'a me'eleha. It happens by itself. Because it's a de facto process, it is not really a conveyance. I mean, it is a conveyance, but it's a de facto conveyance. So it could very well be that under those circumstances, an Uber can go ahead and acquire. But let's say with the matana, with a gift, a different kind of conveyance, a non-de facto conveyance, perhaps an Uber can't acquire. So what Abaye is trying, so we'll say, Rav Sheshes is saying, I come to my shita that an Uber could go ahead and acquire from this case of Yerusha. And Abaye is just saying, excuse me, Rav Sheshes, I don't know that you could formulate an entire approach based on this case, because this could be just aloha by Yerusha, but it may not apply in other cases of conveyance. Ravish says, Shiny Hasam, Dirafuye Marfion Be'adayume Kara. Well, this is actually quite interesting. Rava says there's another reason why the people who took possession of the nichse hager, of the property of the ger the first time, don't acquire. What's the reason? Take a look at the Rashbam for just a moment. The Rava Amar, but you see it's the first white line in the Rashbam. So Rava says it could very well be, thank you. It could very well be that at the end of the day, an Uber is not kona at all. The shiny hasam. So we'll say 1 second. If an Uber is not kona at all, so why is it that the first people who took possession of the property, right, of the ger, why do they not acquire it? The shiny hasam gabi hamachzik berishona. So we'll say, I'll tell you why. The people who first took possession of the property don't acquire for the following reasons. The lokana lav mishum uberhu, the in uber yoresh. Rava says again, it's not because of the Uber, because we're going to baskin that an Uber does not acquire. Ela meikara kisher ziko rafuye merafyon biadayu kishemes hager ubizbezu nechasa verziko lo niskavnu lahachzik lagamre. Supposed to listen to this. So Rava says the reason why the first people who took possession of the property of the ger don't acquire it is why? Because when they took possession of it, they didn't have kavana to acquire it entirely. Why? Because I will say they're masupak. What are they masupak about? Are there inheritors or not? Listen to this. Rava says something amazing. Rava says, do you want to know why the first batch of people who took possession of the nichse hager, why they don't acquire it? It has nothing to do with uber kana. In other words, Rava will say the halacha is an uber is not kana. Uber doesn't acquire anything. Rava says, in order to acquire something, you have to take possession of it in a definitive way. What's the case, says Rava over here? A ger dies. Now, word out on the street is that what? Is that what? He had no yarshim. So what happens? A person runs to go and take, because it's hefker. It's hefker. It's opportunities don't come along very often. So he runs to take possession. Also, when a person takes possession of that property, of the ger, is he taking definitive possession? So Rava posits the answer is no. Why? Because at the end of the day, the shmua is that he has no yarshim. Could it be that more information will come to light and there will be yarshim? Absolutely. Therefore, because when he takes possession, it's not a definitive possession. Therefore, once it becomes clear that there are no yarshim, then what? He has to perform a second kinyan. So we'll say, Rav is saying something really quite fascinating over here. That in order for a kinyan to be binding, a person has to go ahead and take definitive position. Whenever apparently people first took nichse hager and there was some ambiguity about the circumstances, it wasn't definitive possession. Therefore, once you found out for sure that there were no yarshim, you would have to reacquire the item of Torah's definitive possession. So the Gemara says, "My b'nai." So we'll say, here's what's interesting: that both according to Rava and Abaye, what they both are doing is they're both saying, Rav Sheshes, you can't bring a proof from here that a yorish is kona. Right? You can't, that an Uber is kona. You can't bring a proof from here that an Uber acquires. According to Abaye, you can't bring a proof from here because this is a case of Yerusha, not a case of a conveyance. According to Rava, this has nothing to do with Uber kona. We pass in Uber doesn't acquire. This is different over here because there was a non-definitive act of possession. What's surprising with these two opinions? Ikabenahu sheshamu bo shemes. So the nafkamina between these two cases would be the following. Let's say again, the ger dies. They heard that the wife was pregnant. Then they heard that the Uber died. But in fact, the Uber was alive. But then the Uber died. So what the nafkamina case would be the following: that they heard the ger died, and they had heard that his wife was pregnant. But then they heard that the Uber died, but the Uber was still alive, and then the Uber died. So we'll say, okay, so what's the nafkamina over here? So according to Abaye, who says that Yerusha ba me'eleh shiny, he would say in this case where the Uber was alive, so the Maisa, again, the Uber did acquire, and therefore when the Uber dies, the individuals who want the estate would have to do another Maisa kinyan. Masha'enkin, according to Rava, because at the time that they took possession of the object, they thought the Uber was already dead. Therefore, again, their act of possession was a definitive act of possession. in which case, again, they wouldn't have acquired it, and therefore they would not need a second Maisa Kinyan. Okay, that would be the nafkamina between the two cases. Fine, so what it says, so just to understand where we're holding off right now, here's the good news. Here's the very good news. The good news is we've identified the Shita who holds that Uber is Kona. We've identified the Shita who holds that a fetus has the ability to acquire. This is the position of Rav Sheshes. So Rabbi said, and this is good because remember, since the middle of yesterday's shir, we've been trying to figure out. The Gemara gives you this case of a man who's conveying property over to his unborn child, and the Gemara seems to indicate to me that this works. We're trying to figure out who in the world says this works. At least now we've identified that in fact it is Rav Sheshes who holds that it works. Now we're going to go ahead and bombard Rav Sheshes' Shita and try to figure out why he holds water. So Tashma, so what's the Gemara? Another case. Gemara brings down a brayso. Tinok ben yom echad, no chalu manchil. The halacha is that a child who is 1 day old has the ability to acquire and bequeath. So the Gemara says, ben yom echad in uber lo. What do you see from here? It is only a child who is 1 day old, but not an uber. So I'll say, so what do you see from here? You see from here that halacha lamaisa, it is only if the child is alive that it has the ability to, and when I say alive, let me say it differently, alive outside of the womb, that you see that it has the ability to acquire and to bequeath. But if the child is in utero, then halacha lamaisa again neither has the ability to acquire nor bequeath. So the Gemara says, Hamar Rav Sheshes says, no chel b'nichse ha'ein, lahanchia la'achid min ha'av. Well, so Shesha says, what is this brisa coming to teach me? The novelty in this brisa is that such a child who is 1 day old has the ability to acquire the mother's property in order to bequeath it to his brothers. And we'll say, well, what would this be a case? This would be a case of brothers who share the same father, but different mothers. So we'll say, if you can imagine the following situation. So there are 3 brothers, we call them Reuven, Shimon, and Levi. Reuven and Shimon have one mother. Levi has a different mother, but they all have the same father, Yaakov. What happens? So now Levi's born. Let's say on the day that Levi's born, his mother dies. Mother dies in childbirth. So I'll say, so what happens when Levi's mother dies? Levi acquires all of her property. What then happens if Levi dies? So Levi dies. So again, Nebuch, the mother dies in childbirth. Levi, the child, dies that day. So what happens? So what happens now to the mother's property? The mother's property is now transferred to Levi's paternal brothers. Levi's paternal, assuming there's no father, Levi's paternal brother now will inherit him. So we'll say, so that Rav Shesha says, what this halacha only applies, v'dafka ben yom echad. Now we'll say, now this halacha, that paternal brothers, that one paternal brother could transfer his mother's inheritance to his other paternal brothers only applies where the child was living. However, aval uber lo, we'll say what this would not apply would be in a case of an uber. I was about to say, let's say again, imagine the same scenario, but instead of dealing with a living child, we're now dealing with a child in utero. So we wouldn't say the following. We wouldn't say that, let's say again, if Levi died, well, let's say the uber died in utero, we wouldn't say that the uber inherits the mother and then passes on that property to his paternal brothers. The ability of a child to inherit his mother and then pass on that Yerusha to his paternal brothers only applies if the child was alive, what he calls the Tinok ben Yom Echad. About Uberlo, we'll say if this whole scenario played out ultimately again with the child in utero, it would not work. Now we'll say, take a look for just a moment. 4 lines in the Rashbam. Big third word on the line, Tashma, Tinok ben Yom Echad, Nochel umanchil, ben Yom Echad in Uberlo. We'll say it is dafka only a child who is a ben Yom Echad, who is alive for 1 day, but not an Uber. Alma, Uber eno yoresh Yerusha, dimemela. So we'll say, what do you see from here? You see that a Uber is not yoresh. Well, in other words, you see that at the end of the day, that an Uber does not acquire, because again, if an Uber acquired, then what? Then technically when the mother dies, so the Uber should go ahead and acquire the mother's property and then pass that on to his paternal brothers. But the fact that that does not happen indicates to us that the Uber is not Yoresh. And here's what's interesting. Remember, we assume this is really based on what Abaye said before. We assume that the easiest type of conveyance should be Yerusha, because it's a de facto conveyance. Therefore, if we establish that an Uber is not Yorish, that a fetus doesn't inherit, then it goes without saying that what? That you can't actively convey property or some type of object to an Uber. Therefore, again, it's the Kash Rav Sheshes. So we'll say, therefore, it's Kash Rav Sheshes. So Rav Sheshes says, no. Sheshes is not a Kash on me. Yes, this is Dafka a din over here of a Tinok ben Yom Echad. Only a child, ultimately, again, who is 1 day old, has the ability to inherit the mother and pass that over to his paternal brothers. But if the child is in utero and the mother dies, the Uber does not inherit. My timer, what's the reason? I will say, I'm a base. My timer, I'm a base. Daha mayis beresha. Oh, I will say, Rav Sheshes says something different. Rav Sheshes says, because if the mother dies, by definition, the fetus dies. If the mother dies, the fetus dies. And Rav Sheshes' opinion is that the fetus dies before the mother. The fetus dies before the mother. To whom mayis beresha, uber lefnei ha'im. And therefore, I will say, because the fetus dies before the mother, therefore what? Therefore, the fetus doesn't have the ability to mean, the Havamina, I will say, is the way this works was the following. Mother dies, fetus is alive, fetus inherits the mother, then fetus dies and conveys the property over to paternal brothers. In Rav Sheshes' worldview, which I will say, obviously, this you understand, this is much more a scientific shaila than it is a halachic shaila, and Rav Sheshes' understanding is based on the particular societal realities. Rav Sheshes understands it to mean that Lemaisa, again, the way it works is the fetus dies first, and then the mother dies afterwards. So because of that, the fetus never even inherits. So remember, so I want to be clear. So Rav Sheshes says, "Ve'ein ben yoreshes imo bekever," and a son doesn't inherit his mother in the grave. To convey property to his paternal. So I said that lashon of "ein ben yoreshes imo bekever" means a son does not inherit his mother after the son has died. We learned this concept before, that the laws of inheritance only pass through living people, do not pass through dead people. Therefore, if the son predeceases his mother, so the son does not go ahead and inherit his mother in order to convey that property over to his paternal brothers. So what this all comes down to, and this is quite dramatic, where this all comes down to Rav Sheshes, listen, I'm right, meaning an Uber has the ability to be Orish, an Uber has the ability to inherit. This case is different. The reason in this case that the Uber doesn't inherit his mother and thereby convey the inheritance to his paternal brothers is because we assume when a child dies in utero, the mother dies first. I'm assuming the mother and the child are dying. The mother dies first and the child dies afterwards. And because a son can't inherit his mother after the son's death, that's why the property never passes to the paternal brothers. L'meimra, do my inspiration. Shesh, are you telling me that when a mother and a child dies, the child in utero dies first? But there was that episode, whatever the episode was, and the mother died, and we saw the baby move 3 times. In other words, they saw externally on the stomach of the mother, they saw the baby die 3 times after the mother passed away. Amar Mar Abashi, Midi Dahavi Azanav Haltash Mefarcheses. This is no different than the tail of the lizard that rides, that moves after you cut it off. In other words, what the Gemara is attributing the movement of the child to is some type of involuntary spasm. It has nothing to do ultimately. Now again, the reason I mention the scientific pieces is because we know scientifically today that a baby in utero can absolutely survive past the clinical death of the mother. But nevertheless, they're reflecting what they felt to be what was the science of the times. So interestingly enough, what they're seeing when they say the baby moved after the death of the mother was actually the baby still alive. The baby could still, right? Obviously not for long, but the baby is still alive. They attributed that movement of the baby after the death of the mother to some type of I don't know what the scientific term is, but the involuntary spasms, right? After the person, but it's the same way that even after a person dies, the person being dead, they can have involuntary spasms, the body can have involuntary spasms. So that's they were attributing it to. But what comes out over here is Rav Sheshes therefore said, my sheet is still correct. In other words, Rav Sheshes still feels that his sheet is intact, which is that an Uber has the ability to be Kona. Fine. Mar Breit Rav Yosef, Mishmei Rav Amar. So we'll say Mar Brit Rav Yosef. In the name of Rav said the following. Lomar. This teaches us Shemamait Bechelek Bechora. Rav said the point of that price at the end of Amud Aleph was to teach us the following: that a baby who was born, a son, is memait in the chelik of the bechora. I will say every son is reckoned in the division of the estate, and therefore I will say that has an impact ultimately again on the bechora of the firstborn. I will say, remember again, how do we figure out Pishnayim? Remember we spoke about this. You figure out Pishnayim by taking the number of brothers, then what? Plus one, divide the estate by that amount, and give the firstborn son 2 of those portions. Obviously, the more brothers there are, the smaller the pishnayim of the bechor. So says the Gemara, the dafka ben yom echad, aval uber lo. Well, so this is amazing. When calculating the pishnayim of the bechor, we only take into account who? Living siblings, living brothers. But let's say again, let's say at the time that the man dies, time that the father dies, so his wife is pregnant with an additional child, we do not take that uber into account. In other words, so the pishnayim of the bechor is only calculated by the sons who are alive, meaning it has to be at least a tinok ben yom echad, a brother who is 1 day old, but any child in utero does not come into the account of reckoning the pishnayim. My time, what's the reason? The yoldula amrachmana. So what's it? Because the pasuk says, when speaking about firstborns, it says v'yoldulo, they were born to him, indicating to us that only children who are born come into the parsha of Pishnayim, or even the calculation of Pishnayim. So the Gemara says v'yoldulo amrachmana da'amar mar bereit Rav Yosef mishmei derava ben shenolad la'achra misas aviv. We'll say if you have a son who is born after the death of his father, this is actually a very interesting case. Father dies, and then after his death, his wife gives birth to a son. What's the halacha? Eino memai bechelik pachora. They both say that son is not reckoned. We'll discuss what to do with him, but he is not reckoned as part of the calculation of Pishan. Let's say this: Yaakov dies, and at the time that he dies, he has 3 sons: Reuven, Shimon, and Levi. He dies. His wife is pregnant. Before the division of the estate, she gives birth to another son, Yehuda. We're suggesting over here that we do not calculate in Yehuda for the calculation of the Bechor. In other words, we'll say, how would we figure out the Pishnayim of Reuven? We would take Reuven, Shimon, and Levi, the 3 brothers who were alive at the time of the death of the father, add 1, 4, divide the estate by 4, give Reuven 2 of those pieces, Shimon and Levi get the other pieces. We'll discuss later what to do with Yehuda a different time, but the point over here is that Yehuda is not counted for the division of the Bechor, of the Pishnayim. What's the reason? My taima, v'yodlo amrachman v'halaka. Because also the pasuk says, in speaking about the Bechorah, the Yoldulo, they were born to him, indicating to us that the only sons who come into the discussion about the Bechorah are who? Sons who were alive at the time of the death of the father. So the Gemara says, V'halaka. The Surah Masnuhachi, so we're saying Surah, they recorded the previous conversation as just stated. The Pumpadisa Masnuhachi, in Pumpadisa Rabosai, they went ahead and they explained it as follows. So the Gemara says, Amar Marbrit Rav Yosef B'Shmei Derava, Bechor Shenola La'achar Misas Aviv, Eno Notel Pishnei. We'll say another important halacha. If a Bechor is born after the death of the father, he does not get Pishnei. We'll say, so again, unfortunately, when does this happen? So man dies, his wife is pregnant. After his death, she gives birth to a firstborn son. What happens with the estate? Imar says that son does not get Pishnayim. Why? Now, again, I will say, we'll discuss what happens with him, but he does not get Pishnayim. My time, what's the reason? Yakir Amrachman Vahalaka di Yakir. So we'll say at the end of the day, the Torah says Yakir. We'll say Yakir means that the father has to recognize the firstborn son, which indicates to us what? That the father knew the son before the time of his death. If he did not know the son, then that son is not reckoned as a Bechor Lagabe Pishnayim purposes. So the Gemara says, V'hilchosal k'chol hani lishni. We'll say, Da'amar mar breit Rav Yosef mishmei deraba. And now halacha follows, we'll say, all of these different things, all of these different halachas that we just said before in the name of Mar Bereit Rav Ashi, which I will say, meaning the halacha follows all of these statements that apply to only a child who is one day old, but not a child to in utero. So such a child will not go ahead and divide up the estate. Will not lessen the bechora. Such a child ultimately, again, if born after the death of the father, will not take pishnaim. So all the halachos that we said in the name of Mar Braid Rav Yosef, ultimately again are in fact halacha lemaisa. Fine. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Hamazakil uber. So we'll say. So again, understand we're still we still have a very singular mission, which is we started on Kof Mem Aleph Amud Beis with a statement that said that a man could go ahead and convey property to his unborn child. We've now identified that the Shita who holds that you can convey property ultimately again to an uber is Rav Sheshes. So I'll say we're still continuing to challenge that particular statement. So Amar Rav Yitzchak, Amar Rav Yochanan, Hamazakil uber lo kana. If one goes ahead and conveys property to an uber, the uber is not kona. Vim tomar Mishnah seinu. So we'll say, maybe we'll say, what about our Mishnah? Boss, remember again, what did our Mishnah say? Our Mishnah dealt with the case of a man who says, if my wife gives birth to a girl, I'm going to give her 200 zuz. If my wife gives birth to her, I'm going to give him 100 zuz. So that was clearly a case where what? Where a person is conveying ownership of something to an uber. So you see from here, you see from our Mishnah, that you can convey ownership to an unborn child. So the Gemara says, no, don't bring her out from the Mishnah. Hoil v'daito shel adam krova eitzel beno. Both sides, the Mishnah might be different. The Mishnah is an exception. Why? Because a person is especially close to his child. Now, what does that mean? Take a look at the Rashbam, I will say. So it's the Rashbam 2, 4, 6, 7 lines in. Krova eitzel beno. Begamar umakne bechol libo. Aval uber achar lo kona. Both say this is actually very interesting. Look at these words. For one's own child, a person goes ahead and conveys ownership over the property bechol libo, with all of his heart. However, for an uber, for another fetus, is not kuna. Both say this is amazing. Because what the Rashbam is doing over here is giving us an incredible insight. Why is it that we would say uber lo kana? In general, what's the logic to say that a fetus, an unborn child, cannot be kona something? So of course, the simplest logic is that it's davar shlab al yolam. It's not yet even in existence. But taking that a step further, the Gemara assumes the following: that I don't know, a person doesn't know what's going to happen with the uber. Right? Is the uber going to be born? Is the uber not going to be born? Meaning, is it going to be a vlad shal kayama? Is it going to be an enduring child, not an enduring child? I don't know what's going to happen with the uber. Therefore, because there is so much uncertainty surrounding the uber, therefore the words of the Rashbam is a person is not gamar umakne b'chol libo. I don't convey the property b'leiv shalom with a complete heart because I don't really know what's going to happen with the uber. So both sides, beautifully enough, the Gemara says that's not true with one's own child. With one's own child, someone has a certain confidence. With one's own child, one has a certain certitude. I know that's probably not a word, but certitude, it is good. Certitude, right? A person has a certain certitude. A person knows, I have confidence that this child is going to be born. It's going to be a vlad shel kayama. So the Gemara suggests over here is, it could very well be that even if you normally hold that uber ain't a kona, that you can convey something over to an uber, that's an uber who's not my child. But an uber who is my child, ultimately again, Rashbam says, gamar umakne bechol libo. A very profound statement, I will say. Amar Shmuel Rav Chana Bagarata, Puk ein sili be'asara. So go bring me 10 people. Ve'imalacha go get me 10 people is another way of saying, go get me a group because I want to make a declaration. Make a halachic declaration. What's the halachic declaration? I'm going to tell you in front of them, I'm ready to make an announcement. Says Shmuel to Rav Chana Bagarata, go get me 10 people, and I want to make an announcement. The halacha is that you can convey ownership of property to an uber, and the uber will acquire the property. The and I will say, what is the halacha? Hamazakil over lokana. All right, it's a little bit anticlimactic, right? So here, Shmuel is ready to make the whole announcement, right? The incredible news, the Uber is kana. By the way, the halacha is, an Uber is not kana. And we're going to see what the halacha l'mais is actually. But the Gemara seems to come to a conclusion and say that an Uber is not kona, right? A fetus, you can't convey property to an Uber. Now, both sides. Now, what that statement means. Because remember, again, we have to subdivide that statement. Is that saying any conveyance on Uber does not have the ability to acquire? What about de facto conveyance? Like what? Like Yerusha, like inheritance. Doesn't Uber? So we'll define the scope of this statement. Hahudam l'dvisu said to his wife, Nechasi livni diahava lichi minach. So what's an interesting case? So man says to his wife, now I want to be clear what's happening in this case. So the wife is not pregnant. The wife is not pregnant. So he says to his non-pregnant wife, any children that I will have from you, I hereby convey my property to. So she's not pregnant right now. So there's not even an Uber. There's not even an Uber. And what happens? So he says to her, whatever children I will have from you, I'm hereby conveying my property. So what happened? Asabre kashisha. So it happens to be this man had another son, an already existing older son from another wife. This son comes over to him. Kashisha means the older son says, Amarle, Hugavra Matehevi Ale. So the son says, no, Dad, what's going to be with me? Or you just gave over. I don't even know who you gave it over to. Right? You gave it over to some future child from this wife of yours. What's going to be? I mean, no disrespect, but what's going to be with me? Going to be with me. So look at the Rashbam. I'm sorry. Before that, he says, so the father says, Zil Kani Kechad Mibra. Go and acquire like one of the sons who I would have from this wife. So we'll say. So just to clarify this, Yaakov's married to Rachel and to Leah. He says to Rachel, any son that I have from you, I hereby convey my property. Now Rachel's not even pregnant. Meanwhile, Leah has a son. We'll call Leah's son Reuven. Right? And what happens? Reuven says, Dad, what about me? So Yaakov says, you're right. You should acquire like one of Rachel's sons would. Okay, so we'll say. So remember again, Rachel's got no sons. But yet, again, Yaakov conveyed property ownership to the future son that he will have with Rachel. Now he says to Reuven, you could acquire like one of Rachel's sons. So we'll say, so the shaila, of course, is what's the status of that conveyance? Take a look at the Rashbam for just a moment. It's at 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 lines up on the bottom. Zil Kani Kechad Bra Yikna Ke'echal Min Abanim Asin Le'Ival Mishazu. I hereby give you the right to acquire like one of the sons who would come from Rachel. So the Gemara says, so watch this. Let's analyze this. So Hanach, so we'll say Hanach refers to these sons, that the future sons that will come from Rachel, Vadai Lokan. So we'll say, let's say Rachel down the road does have sons, right? We'll call them Yosef and Binyamin. Rachel has sons down the road, so it's clear that Yosef and Binyamin don't acquire anything as a result of this initial statement of Yaakov. Why not? Dakati lesnu. Because it will say they don't even exist at the time of the declaration. In other words, it will say our whole discussion up until now at least is regarding an Uber. Okay, so at least the Uber exists. The Uber is here. This case over here, the father is conveying ownership to sons who do not even yet exist and may never exist, even if they eventually come into the world. Rachel has 2 sons, Yosef and Binyamin. Those children acquire nothing as a result of this statement because the statement effectively was meaningless. Hi. So what about the older son who does exist? So remember again, I will say, when the older son who Yaakov has from Leah, i.e. Reuven, comes along and says, Dad, what about me? So the way Yaakov frames it is, Reuven, you should acquire my property like the sons of Rachel. So hi, is cholek l'talya b'makom banya, or less cholek l'talya b'makom banya. So we'll say, do we say that Reuven has a portion in Yaakov's property alongside the future sons of Rachel, or does he not have a piece of the property alongside the future sons of Rachel? As we'll say, you hear, look at the Rashbam for just a moment. Islay tcholik l'talya b'makom banya. We'll say Talia literally means a young son. Does the young son, which is a reference to Reuven, ultimately have a portion banya by the other sons, the future sons of Rachel, or not? Look at the Rashbam. Is cholik l'talya b'makom banya. Because we'll say, even though we're saying now that what? Yosef and Binyamin, the future sons of Rachel, do not acquire anything as a result of this declaration. The name of Daiton Sha'adam Kruba Eitzabano, below Yiknu Ella Betoras Yerushas B'Misas Aviem, Afilu Hachi, Beri Atalia Kana B'Kwach Matanazu, Chelik Echam Milbad Chalko Shir Shemachab. So we'll say, here's the Shaila. The Shaila in this case, here's what we know. What Yaakov says, what's the status of Yaakov's statement to Rachel? What's the status of that statement? It's meaningless. Why? Why? Because there's no children. Rachel is not even pregnant right now, so the statement is meaningless. The shaila is, but is the statement meaningful? Legabe Ruvain, the son who is in existence, that ultimately, again, when Yaakov ultimately dies, will we convey to Reuven an additional portion? In other words, the portion that he got as a son of Yaakov, plus the fact that Yaakov said that he should inherit alongside Rachel's children. So is that statement effective, Legabe Reuven, or not? So the Gemara says the following. The Gemara says, Rabbi Abin, Rabbi Meisha, Rabbi Yirmiyah, Damri Ischol, Oischol, Ketayim Makom Banyo. So we'll say, Rabbi Abin, Rabbi Meisha, Rabbi Yirmiyah hold that Reuven does get a future portion by the sons of Rachel. Once Rachel has sons, Rabbi Avo, Rabbi Chanina Bar Papi, Rabbi Yitzchak Nafka, the Amri Le, Les Choylek Latalia B'Makom Banyo. Whereas we'll say these other opinions, Rabbi Avo, Rabbi Chanina Bar teams, right? These other rabbanim say no, that Reuven will not get a portion alongside the sons of Rachel. So we'll say, we'll stop over here for today. We're going to pick up in the midst of this major machlokes tomorrow to see what's the status. Does Reuven get extra Yerusha as a result of this statement? Or not?
Tomorrow, ask,
get around it. I wasn't quite clear. If you haven't Uber, the white that's something you won't inherit. You just wouldn't get the piece now. One course. So I might be Bava Basra, let's put it that way. Uber will never inherit anything.
No, it's not the child. That's not right. If he's an only child, he doesn't have that is the language.
Right. Thought of him as doesn't exist.
Correct.
Doesn't exist.
Correct.
He wouldn't inherit. He'd be on his own.
That's correct.